and we had discussed, some strategies for either you or I for the next time that we approach, look into it, see the reflection back, walk around it, or potentially even touch it.
Yeah.
And prior to yesterday, where I like the space shuttle does between the Earth and the Moon, I flew by what we call, if you picture that core
Yep.
little size cavern in the middle of a hollowed out null with a series of others around either side axial.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like pearls coming in from single strand with two other strands, so three different dimensions, entangled into one on a 10, skip to 1, skip to 10, like a rosary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah, I
and it's
like to think of it like a train.
a,
Yeah, yep. A train with
a
carriages.
spinning or a cement mixer, right? The
Yep.
cement mixer doesn't work unless there's a breather, a null that's straight through the center. Otherwise, burp and puke all over the place, and nature wouldn't work.
No, no.
It's so obvious, it's so silly. But so imagine this going around with two other coil or strands that can unfurl. So quantum nets can unfurl from each of the three. Quantum hairs can pick up neutrinos, so on and so forth as necessary, much like a feather of, the downy feather of a bird.
Yep. Yep.
And within that core now, that was the target, which you and I have both seen. And in my 5 times, once, I don't want to get you. So anyway, and I discussed ahead of time with you a plan, actually months ago, I think, to next time you're there, touch it or
Yep.
go into it.
Yep.
And some very significant things happened around the world. It was it started Orthodox Easter, the whole Easter season, but so timing's important, but we'll get rid of that.
Yep.
So this time I said I was going to do Star Wars, the very first Star Wars, forget which part, doesn't matter, 4, 5, 6, to on the Death Star, provide an Immelman move and then a dive straight into balls to the wall, penetrate core. And that's what I did last night. And I utilized my Dewa G90, which has relevance to numerologists out there.
Yep.
At a certain time, we have all this data recorded, right? And I spent 30 minutes, closed eyes, in tunneling. And here's how it essentially went. It was 20 minutes in, 10 minutes out.
Yep.
Maybe 5. I kind of lost track of time, but law of thirds would dictate, because you can't, like a lung, for example, you can't fully deflate a lung or it doesn't work, right? So there's always about a third that sticks back.
Yep.
So this time it was my back was killing me, which is why I was in the G90. I had the time, everything was quiet. Atlas went home to his parents. And I had 30 minutes of just time I'm just gonna be me. And I performed that move, but I had to get there first. So the very early Buckeye tunnel to more of a rhombus and oval tunneling system that it started just as a faint road, like Mario Kart, right? But tunnel form. And then I started brushing some of the green, and just a tinge of blue, no red, just all green. And I kept nudging forward, just nudging forward. And then I realized I was in this colored fog that maybe after 5, 7, 8 minutes, started transitioning to the violets,
Ah,
which at that point I was very close. And then the tunnels became much more precise with some a horizon and a vertical and a diagonal, much like you would find in a very high frequency omnidirectional range VOR track can that
mm-hmm.
just beams both that aircraft use in for navigation, radio navigation.
Right.
Okay, it sits normally like this, but this was full 360 to define a top and bottom to properly prevent gimbal lock. Apollo 13. You have to identify what is top and what is bottom.
Yep.
To be able to know what's up, what's down.
Yep.
Left and right is fairly easy at the point, but inversion. So anyway, I said I'm just going to surrender to this until I start seeing a dot, which would actually focus on the eyeball, a floaty.
Yep.
And I was particularly looking for any color, and started typically in white, and then I saw the red, blue, no green. But I was in search of gold, based on our previous conversation.
Yep. Yep.
And so the fog started going away, and then I spotted gold, and it's very slippery. It was ahead of me, because of some turns I made, and so I had it in my sights. But it was still ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I was just bumping the throttle until at one point numbers and letters were spiraling a matrix, spiral matrix. And I bumped it up to where those were no longer numbers and letters. They were, but instead they were streaks. They were much like warp speed and Star Trek, Star Wars, blah blah blah.
Yep. Yeah.
And brilliant color. And then I saw it, circled around it, Immelman, and dove straight into it. I didn't even because I made the plan.
Yep.
We discussed this before I did it.
Yep.
You and I said, I'm going to speed her some bitch, and I don't care what happens.
Yeah.
And I was amazed at how suddenly everything became still as peace exemplified. And hold on, red and blue orbs. So, and here's the interesting thing. They weren't orbs. They were actually a series of discs. So if you can picture a straight line null through a crystal.
Yep.
But they were actually so I the view was like discs. This being the null.
Yep.
Through,
yep.
Right.
Yep.
So my perspective, because I saw now intersecting straight through this way was a beam of light that just went white light that went straight through.
Yep.
Okay. Everything's spiraling. So, I come in from this angle.
Yep.
I was going smaller to bigger. So I kind of came in like from over here, and did like an approach you would make on base, flying an airplane, going for a landing. And I just kept low. And what I saw was triangulation, just like this.
Right. Yeah.
Right straight through there. And then I went from green, because I felt safer with green, or no, I'm sorry, blue in this case.
Yeah.
The green was the fun. Chickens getting excited. So I went through the blue, and it was just utter peace. And then on the other side, it started accelerating again. back through just a slight hesitancy of fog into a red one. Same thing. And then after the red, I hit gold. Nice beard to some bitch.
Yeah.
Here's how the approach went. It was spinning this way.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It was this way.
Yeah.
So what I did, I reversed flowed and came in through. So this is a low pressure system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I flew in on a high system.
Yeah.
And then spiraled right in and went through that to the red and then to the gold. And based on you were curious about the view of if you exited from origin back to an N1 position.
Yeah.
I didn't have to turn all the way around because I was in my day one, but I just spun it around. It was beautiful. And I was just leading. Well, they were still coming, right? They were still following flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was going faster than flow. It was a very neat experience. And then I tunneled out. Took me, I call it deramping.
Yeah. Yeah.
10 minutes after all was out, I had a beautiful massage. And it was all light, 100% eyes closed, very lightly closed, but eyes closed.
Fantastic.
What do we do with that, Don?
There are features of vision in that quantum landscape that provides context for the mathematics, right? So for me, that golden sphere of light, the atomic decay experience, the positioning of both on either side of that positron electron pairs and that first s orbital layer, positrons further from than electrons, giving the splitting of the alpha fine structure constant, and that the kind of velocity v is really the positive aspect, which is faster than light, and so that magnetic association with the velocity of faster than light aspects. Yeah, I'm still, it's like I build my model based on that experience that I had, and it gives me the foundations to look at things from a different perspective. And it's from the different perspective that I've come to the realization of that Hebek isotropic singularity model and the whole idea of non-interactive logic, letting everything come back to the point of balance and the dualistic perspective of opposites attracting, come back to the singularity, the inward trajectory to give the balance. If you look at the amount of energy down at the Planck scale, there's no wiggle room down there, right? There's no room for error because there's so much in the way of, well, it's had 13.8 billion years to get down to that length, and so it's like,
so
it's contained at that point to give the geometry, which then the square root of the Planck scale gives the electron and the positron pairing. And there's those four particles, or the four, you would say,
quadrants,
circles. They're circles, right? Four circles in the
4 pieces of pie.
Yeah, but there's nothing in them, right? There's nothing actually in them. They're just actually the circle circumference. Because if you take the 2 pi r times 2 pi r divided by pi, you end up with 4 pi r squared, which is the surface area of the electron and the positron. So in a way, the model conveys the processes that are operating within that landscape of the singularity to create positron electron pairing.
And the reason I like to use VR on this, Doc, is
Yeah.
with lensing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people fail to recognize infinity is typically rationalized as a supermassive black hole, not realizing it works in the opposite direction, way down deep, 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 deep.
Yeah.
And it has to work by otherwise nature doesn't work.
No, well,
Space doesn't
the
work.
two are connected, right? If you go all the way down from that implosive process down to the singularity and all the way out to the inflationary process to the boundary of the universe, the two are connected. They're
So
intimately
let's
connected in those two distances because they started in the same place, one going in, one going out, in balance. And that's what the mathematics shows. The mathematics shows that it is connected at that Hebek isotropic singularity to begin with.
another white Prius drove by. I wave hi to everybody.
Yeah.
So let's talk the whiffing. What's in it for the individual? What's in it for me? What's in it for you? What's in it for every breathing creature out there, plants included? If we get over
you could
ourselves,
say, well, this was my
yes,
healing, right? This was my healing that I received as a spiritual experience. And it changed my life completely from this external physical reality, which I've got no control over what's happening out there, to coming back.
with a world that would love us.
Yeah. You come back in, you find yourself, you find your connection to your creator, right? You find the missing piece of the puzzle that connects everything back together again, to find the singularity at the start, to understand your connection to the singularity.
And then
So the outcome for everybody is really
so labyrinth inside
peace.
very puzzle, inside an enigma, inside a rose, which matches E10. If you take the culmination of observation by observers, E9s,
Yeah.
to the irrationality that emotions drive, which never made a good decision. Emotion, good or bad, never made it unless you were just flat ass lucky. But in particle physics, there's no luck. There is placement.
well, when you let your when you let
101.
your unconscious mind be your guide, when you're in Q, when you're in that unconscious state, in a way, it's operating all the time anyway, and it's the conscious mind that gives you the feedback loop. It's the observer. Conscious reality is slow in comparison to the unconscious experience. So that program that's been downloaded in your life experience has been recorded, gives you the program that you're playing, right? So you're playing the programs based on your unconscious experiences that's been recorded. When you have the tools to then break open that box and let out the energy to realign your entire life into I'm now in control of myself, because I'm no longer subject to that imprinting, that subject to the actual trauma that I've experienced in my life as my child, which is holding me in that position. You let go, you let it out. And once you've let it out, you're free, right? You're free of the trauma. You're free to walk your journey and live the life that you want to live. So it's transformational from that perspective.
Because you can't a burning bush moment. You can't unsee it.
No, you can't unsee it. Once you've experienced it, the experience
So
of the release in itself is transformational.
Yeah, well, so as we bring things to close, let's just reemphasize what this happens forever, big and small. There has to be a bridge, right? So regular average Joes have to receive messaging that follows the books. to do certain things by choice, by pure individual choice. And I like to sum it up this way. Much like the 3 feet, if you put end to end, 3 feet of DNA fitting inside a cell that divides,
Yeah.
keeping pace, tempo, divides until it gets exponential. And I guess the message with gifts along the way, sudden onslaught of dancing, playing music, multi-dimensional thinking to gain a full 360 perspective of what we call in Six Sigma world an FMEA, and the failure mode effect analysis based on an interrelationship diagram using families of variation that we can easily do, and affinity and flow mapping.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all math, but somebody came up with a freaking pretty perfect plan, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the context in plain speak, which is what I was hired by corporations all over the place, because I could speak janitorese to technicianese to administrative assistantese to managerese to senior management to the CEO. Yeah. And Russ Meyer the third, the first, well, the third CEO of Cessna Aircraft that began in 1927, but it originated from three: Walter Beechcraft, Lloyd Stearman, Boeing, and Clyde Cessna. Back in the early 20s, started World Travel Company. And the only difference is Clyde wanted to make a monowing, but it was approaching war, between World War One, World War Two. They wanted to stick with the biplanes. Clyde wanted to and purchased a French aircraft called Silverwings, and learned the dynamics of a post and cable, starting with the basics, much like using EMDR or light techniques. There's other techniques that I've shortcutted in my research and studies in black hole, to shortcut that. But much like basic training in military, you got to learn some basics,
yeah,
and know where the 7 pitfalls are by abiding by the 10 commandments. Right shoulder E9, right, left shoulder, right shoulder.
Yeah.
In your view, it gets goofy.
Yeah.
It's fun. To ultimately make a self-determination that has to work in the same way from central nervous system, the entire thing, through blood vessels. The fusion happens in the lungs to feed the body. We're just part of a bigger system, and you can see that. So let's just there's a lot of Tolkien, which I love talking Tolkien. But really, the only true way that a creator would guarantee the story remains consistent is to use scrolls, runes, Sanskrit, books, plays, music, and they're all in tempo to keep up with modern day, to where we're at the point of black box, peripheral, pick a show today, right? So there had to be a guaranteed pre-programmed way back in each of one of us, way back here in the brainstem, a little Higgs boson that would say, yep, this is your purpose. Just abide by the laws, local, state, federal, all the way up through the 10 commandments. Avoid the 7, when they're there, usually. Like tricky, there's gray areas, little transition areas.
Yep.
That make it a bit of a challenge, which for me happened, and all of us, in unconscious REM. Techniques like EMDR and hand tap very quickly, and a proper therapist will tell you exactly what will happen ahead of time. If not, don't trust them.
Yeah.
You don't trust them. They should be able to tell you exactly the connectivity between your right and left brain and absolve through the atomic cross entanglement, like all that 3 feet of DNA crammed into a cell,
Yep.
and multiplies the same way, unless altered. Uh, uh, to refine that and finally get to a point where you can just surrender it. Often misinterpreted in the books as, you have to, right, be a thumper. You don't have to be a thumper. You just have to understand, right? It's all particles.
Yeah.
It's all particles. So for the listening audience, please, all of us have been volunteering our time. Dr. Keryn, myself, several other companies, the members of Black Hole who aren't here, and quite frankly, aren't even fully convinced. It's called Pascal's wager. Okay, Pascal's wager. Just look it up. It's well defined. There is no wrong answer. There's just easier paths and less paths as you clean out your closets. Seriously, start with your closet.
Yeah.
There'll be something in your closet, a watch from a grandfather, an item, a picture, in every one of our, and that triggers not the traumatic necessarily, but the goodness and history, because history. And if you're going faster than the speed of light, like in the LHC, right? If the proper hydrogen helium mix were combined and especially intertwined with two groups of 8, a 60-mile and a 17-mile, you can realize energy can be sourced through not the collision, the hot fusion or Newtonian result. For every charm, there's an anti-charm. For every left, right, up, down, top, bottom, there's an anti-left, right, top, bottom. Just with an intersecting diagonal to bridge the dimensions, like Star Trek chess, right? But with a diagonal. Interstellar became, Matthew McConaughey came very close with the lines of the bookshelves and of the blinds.
Yep.
And had they put a diagonal to it that transects all dimensions,
yep,
it would have been much more enlightening. But you can picture it. So in resolving PTS, it's called original sin. You're then free to think freely, still by the same rules, local, state, federal, blah, blah, blah. Knowing there's gray areas, there's transition areas, and tests to provide a perfect bigger system DNA. So Dr. Keryn, Dr. K, a K segment in a DNA strand, right? So names, heritage, descendant tree becomes very valid in all that started in one, right? The one continent that through shelving spread out, knowing that in particle physics, atomics, everything, naturally, we're going to come back together as one. So it's not scary.
No.
There's a plan.
Yep.
And that, sir, is why I very much appreciate working with you, because you get it.
Well, when you've experienced something that science in its current state and form can't inform you of, then I think if you're given the tools to be able to then uncover the actual mechanisms responsible within the unconscious part of the mind to provide a rational explanation based on atomic physics of unstable atoms, it really provides us a basis for moving forward, to understand that our current models are not suited for the application of human biology, and we need to really be inclusive of the unstable in terms of the atomic physics with respect to our innate ability to be an emotional being, a connected being, and coming from the oneness that is of all of us. So when you take yourself back to that cognitively to be able to understand that, then you can understand the connections between us all. And
So,
really,
but you truly have to drill in to the null core and come back out.
yeah, you do.
Much like
You've
if
got to
we took
go in. You've
this,
got to go in and come back out. Otherwise,
twisted it
you're not going to be
and bent it over.
transformed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it there.
Well, Doc, you're an honorable man. I know you have other bullets in your holster that only an honorable man would hold back short of, to let the math speak for itself. Very, very interesting conversation with Martin today. And I texted you earlier.
Yeah.
He's going to be getting that to some scientists that may be contacting both of us, I hope, here very soon.
Fantastic.
And start, we know where the pieces belong. We know which way the pieces go, right side up. Really all now is a few gluons and muons, and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Just real quick to the audience, if keep the VR glasses on for just a minute. Just picture yourself as a ship going through, Earth, going through space, in a spiral, again, Milky Way galaxy. It's everything real. And just realizing that the singular has to be real or it doesn't work. Nothing would work without E equals MC squared, which you really need at least 3 physics formulas to get to. And quite frankly, Dr. Keryn's work and his formulas all come down to really 4 digits based off some very common trigonometry and algebra. I mean, there's nothing more complex than that.
No, it's if you understand, I'm not a physicist. I'm a biochemist and enzymologist, and my model is an empirical model. It's a mathematical calculation based on inversion and inverse square law type photon decay systems, the gravitational process, Coulomb's charge. So I'm kind of integrated everything down to the singularity at the beginning.
What you really have to Planck scale to really to absorb that, just knowing it happened here the same as it happens up there.
Yeah, totally. So, it gives you the bridge to be able to enter a lens that observes the entire universe and identifies dark energy and dark matter and the processes of matter formation from photons. So and how that relates to our biology.
So oh,
so the model
as we bring this to a
self-explanatory,
close,
hopefully. What's that? Sorry, Randy?
As we start bringing this to a close, I'm anxious to share some more stuff with you. But that's my train of thought. Easy. Is it fair to say scientists are freely accepting of change, or might there be pride, prejudice, greed, the 7 deadly that might block some science? Or would you say that it's totally open-minded to see? And
I would say that there's a lot of water that needs to go under the bridge before the model will be accepted in a open forum in a scientific community. And science is about coming up with ideas and creating models that reflect reality. And given that our standard model of particle physics has a really good model, and the hot Big Bang cosmology model is really good as well, then most people are just going to accept the status quo rather than actually exploring the supersymmetry inversion model as a revision to, rather than a hot Big Bang, a cold alpha particle emission from a helium Bose-Einstein condensate, and the connection to he the father, he the king of creation. So maybe more of a scientific bent toward the Christian community would be more accepting of the model, because it's more in alignment with a biblical context.
So with VR glasses on again, VR glasses, you're in this ship we call her, blah blah blah, in a matrix type system, and we can get projections that has clearly been known, and most probably hidden, or either it could have been simple as just totally forgotten or disregarded. But at some point, somebody made a E9 decision to hide it.
Yeah.
When it doesn't add up their way.
No.
It adds up this way.
Yeah.
Mathematically. And there's a purpose. There's a purpose.
Yeah.
And which I gratefully from the bottom of my heart, sir, appreciate you and I intertwining. There's no possible chance we've ever discussed, rehearsed, especially to this degree, anything. And there's anti-Newtonian antis that, much like this discussion, which doesn't appear to happen in any other discussion you have, seems to happen with us, and especially black hole. Holy Christ.
Well,
it's a challenge. It's a
puzzle. People, if you consider how the mind records the information and creates the structure in which your beliefs are founded on, and then in a sense, the foundations of a person and their belief system and their values and their ethics and their choices all are built from that. And so this process, which is actually creating the mind from the hydrogen, and in that process, that in of itself is the biblical teaching of the passion story. And so, it's quite amusing in a sense that people won't look at religion in terms of that scientific framework.
Which
and give it its credibility, right? Give it credibility in that kind of monotheistic singularity model, which is what the Hebek singularity provides. It was me going, okay, I'm going to use my science to explore biblical teaching to see whether it stacks up or not. And yeah, it stacks up. Yeah.
I would challenge the viewing public.
Yep.
Whether it's the Quran, the Torah, the Chinese scrolls, anything African. Yep. I like my kalimba machine. It's a very chanting machine. 3,000 origins, at least 3,000 years, and you gotta kind of at least have a plan to absolve, make apologies, make amends, or have a plan to do so, is what I've found in my experience.
Yeah.
To resolve wherever appropriate.
Yeah.
And in my very heavily recorded, data recorded, time stamped, whether in the movies, 8mm films I have of my life proceeding, I'm sure yours, everyone's. It's not of me, Dr. K, or Colonel Dan, or San Francisco Dan, or Jane, or Sean, blah blah blah. Deb. It's that releasing, that misinterpreted surrender.
Yeah.
You just gotta look yourself in the eye, in the mirror every morning, and figure out which of three ways are you, and control limits, right? This being the perfect control,
Yeah.
this being okay, this sine wave being okay, bouncing,
Yeah.
right? High, low, peaks and valleys. Who moved my cheese? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Womack, anything Womack, and anything Keanu Reeves, anything about Cage. The one assurity that a perfect planner would make was to keep the Bible, Torah, Quran, blah blah blah, LGBTQ, blah blah blah, everything within control limits, and just knowing, okay, did I have an exceedingly unconscious REM dream or an exceedingly negative unconscious REM?
Mm.
And you just figure out which wavelength, and by 9 o'clock in the morning, you consciously put yourself in REM and figure out just what that puzzle was trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And then you lay out the day, and you'll be amazed at the efficiency you can get things accomplished while balancing family, God, and country. So that ship has to create a wake. A wake creates a vacuum. That's you're water skiing, you're looking at the big waves, the journeying. But mathematically, fractals have to fill the void. Now, that could be Putin, that could be Xi, that could be Biden, blah, blah, blah. But it's all real and it's all very rational. And if the world's in kind of chaos right now.
Yeah.
And there's choice. There's left shoulder, right shoulder. Who's going to flip the keys and flip the switch to hit a button? That would be a bad situation.
Yeah, totally.
That's not a black hole. And I know damn well, sir, that is not your intent.
Yeah.
Our intent's to keep us all breathing, just get us through PTS and shed the Ghostbusters 2 river of negative alphas and shed that to form a membrane of an inside of an egg, and then ultimately a shell based on a 56 tetrahedral shape encompassing a Higgs boson right through the hole.
Yeah.
Without ever having to think about it, because if you think about it, you're already too slow.
Yep, totally. Okay, let's call it quits there. And thank you. Thank you, sir, for another enlightening discussion. Yep.
I appreciate it, and peace.
Awesome. See ya.
All right. Talk later.